This is Michelle Hughes, and I'm excited to see the comprehensive land use plan on the agenda, and I hope that it's going to result in a plan that generates a lot of housing for the city to help us get out of our affordable housing crisis. I'm really happy to see in our proposal that we are specifically trying to redress the segregation in the past and the segregation that we have in the present. So I hope we can come up with a good and equitable plan for our comprehensive land use plan. One thing I was a little concerned about is that I want to make sure that when we collect public input about it, that we are getting a representative sample of the, not just the people who live here, but the people who could live here. I noticed in the contract that it said that the city would be responsible for doing recruitment for focus groups for the comprehensive land use plan, and I wanted to make sure that we do that in a way that we're not just gathering the types of people who often speak about these topics, and that includes me. Let's make sure that we're talking to people who we don't normally hear from, and people who don't necessarily even live here right now, but could if we had a good comprehensive land use plan. So I don't know yet what the city's plan is for recruiting for this public engagement, but I hope that it is a good and equitable and representative one. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ralph McKee.
Mr. McKee, phone number 556. Go ahead.
Hello, Ralph McKee. Hello, this is Ralph McKee. Good evening, Fifth Ward. My first topic is CA 13, which would authorize paying the Bodman Law Firm another $150,000 to pursue litigation against Gelman. Since 2016, Bodman has been paid $900,000 to fight Gelman, and in-house lawyers have spent countless hours. That has accomplished virtually nothing. And pursuit of state litigation also unfortunately resulted in delaying asking for EPA intervention by almost 5 years. Approving more fees is throwing good money after bad. State law currently has no teeth. Further, pages 8 to 11 of the 2006 settlement agreement between the city and Gelman, negotiated by Bodman, bars many types of claims that we might have, and they might be time barred too. You should be getting a second opinion. It's not appropriate to have Bodman be the only one, since they'll benefit from going forward by getting paid even if they lose. And they did a bad job of telling you and the public about the infamous fourth CJ and the subsequent corporate process. Do you have a detailed memo explaining why these claims aren't barred? The agenda description does say part of the litigation will be enforcing the 2006 settlement agreement, that same agreement I just talked about. That's allowed under that agreement. Why couldn't that be done mainly in-house with minimal supervision from Bodman? It seems a relatively discrete contractual matter rather than a complex environmental case. Overall, this is a terrible waste of money, which Mr. Dohoney just said we need pretty bad. Next topic is the AC1 memo for a food trucks at the Commons. There are several positions in it which omit important facts, are misleading, or just wrong. Many of these are detailed in Julie Ritter's email to you yesterday, all of which I agree with. I'll focus on just a couple. The memo emphasizes the loss of parking revenue. However, it seems that there isn't any loss of revenue if there would be empty spaces in the underground lots during food truck events, and there typically are. Next, why couldn't the food trucks be charged the same amount for the space they take up? Next, under a 2019 resolution, parking revenue was actually supposed to be used to financially support the Commons. That's been ignored, and to use a phantom loss of revenue as a reason not to allow activity on the Commons is insulting, really, particularly when the 2018 charter amendment approved was supposed to make this a Commons. Obviously, that charter amendment is inconsistent with having cars parked there permanently. This strained implicit argument in the memo would block any use other than parking. Finally, the statement that you need to get a detailed legal opinion rate commercial activity is another
30
indicator
seconds.
of the author's bias against the commons. Really, we've never had vendors allowed to get a permit on city property to sell things? Don't we have a street art fair? My band is scheduled to play at the Commons this Saturday. Does that violate the charter? Should I worry about putting out a tip jar? It's facetious partially, but really, do you think that the Prop A proponents, who by and large are the same people who want food trucks, are going to sue the city? This memo looks like just the latest attempt to stall, stymie, any activity and kill the Commons. It's shameful. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alex Lowe.
Alex Lowe on Zoom. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Alex Lowe calling in from southeast East Ann Arbor. I want to address several topics tonight, but before that, I'd just like to thank Administrator Jahoni for his fantastic budget presentation. First, I want to make a quick note on the comprehensive plan, CA 14, if I remember correctly. I'm glad to see progress happening on this, given how many of the PUD requests we've seen the Planning Commission recently have been for things that, frankly, should be allowed in the zoning already. The comprehensive plan should make a clear call for liberalizing our zoning so that we don't have all of this unnecessary process and require things to be PUDs. Let's fix that, because right now, a lot of Ann Arbor landmarks would just be illegal to build. So we should change that so that we can build the next generation of landmarks. Second, about the dioxin cure. It's clear to even the lay observer that the company who purchased Gelman Sciences is using every bit of procedural trickery available to distance themselves from this mess. This is ludicrous. So far, the city has taken only tentative and timid actions about this. But given that the health of everyone in the city is on the line here, it's time to be bold. And finally, the memorandum to council about food trucks at the library lot. In short, I was floored reading this. If I understand correctly, the Council of the Commons contains several members who were involved in the drafting of Proposal A. Yet the first meaningful attempt that they've made to activate the space is legally questionable under the language of that very proposal. Add to this the fact that it comes over 4 years after Proposal A was voted on, and the whole center of the city claim starts to look like, honestly, a bit of a damp squib. So I went back and watched a few Council of the Commons meetings, and I must say the experience has left me baffled as to how we have continued this for so long. What a Brobdingnagian squandering of the city's limited resources. At a recent meeting, the two council liaisons rightfully removed themselves from the call in protest of a
30
massive breach of rules of order designed to prevent a single commissioner from monopolizing the commission's time. Unfortunately, that appears to have been the only consequence for this commission, despite numerous other breaches of civility and etiquette. So maybe it's time to rethink Proposal A altogether if this is truly the best we can do on your end. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Daniel Adams.
Good evening. Dan Adams, 1016 Daniel Street. The Council of the Commons was created in 2020 to advise this body and help plan the creation of a public park on the library lot. What it's become is a dysfunctional, deeply divided body that's neither advising you nor effectively advancing that project. The latest example of this is on your agenda tonight. That's a 9-page memo prepared by the city administrator, requested by the Council of the Commons on the viability of permitting food trucks on the library lot. Asking city staff to analyze whether food trucks are viable on the site is, to be clear, a desperation play. It's the best option among bad options to activate a site that everyone understands to be undesirable. This is something they proposed back in 2021, and to quote one member, they just needed a win. The logic of using food trucks to draw people to gather on an unimproved parking lot has it exactly backwards, and there are a lot of reasons for that. But it also won't work. A 10-year-old Parks Advisory Commission report explained to us, again, 10 years ago, why. The site doesn't have foot traffic. It's boxed in on 3 sides, and it needs infrastructure to function properly as a public space. Councilmember Briggs, you will recall asking the library director at the Council of the Commons meeting in December about food trucks and activating that site with that activity. And he responded that they've had food trucks on that site, and they're not profitable. So this isn't a hypothetical. We've tested this. The libraries put food trucks out there. They've had to subsidize that activity, and that's the conclusion reached by the administrator. But the dysfunction of this body goes deeper than that. The last Council of the Commons meeting, the members were discussing a draft design RFP that isn't ready to issue despite 2 solid years of planning. It's badly overdue. It hasn't been socialized with city park staff, and it was attacked most of the meeting by a member of the council who spent an 8+ minute diatribe attacking it that survived inexplicably multiple points of order by other members. This council has outlived its utility to the public, and unless it's given a deadline to wrap its work up, it's going to continue to flounder. It's going to bicker about the terms of this RFP that it's never going to issue, and then it's going to attempt to justify its own existence by making work for city staff. Pass a resolution suspending the work of this body effective June 1. Give them a month of runway to wrap up their work. Then let staff and council members who have been supporting this activity patiently focus more of their time on actually meeting pressing resident needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tom Stolberg.
Mr. Stolberg, phone number 534, go ahead.
Good evening. This is Tom Stolberg calling from Lower Town in Ann Arbor. I'm calling about CA 14, the resolution to authorize a professional services agreement with Interface Studio LLC for comprehensive plan services. I am looking forward to this process, as I'm sure many of you are, and as many people in the community are. I speak from the perspective of someone who's been a real estate professional for over 30 years, including as a developer, and who is looking to the comprehensive plan and subsequent zoning changes for guidance on future development of properties that I, my investors, and my clients own. I participated in some previous comprehensive plan revision processes, such as the Northeast Area Plan, E2D2, and the Lower Town Comprehensive Plan, as well as observing comprehensive plan revisions that impacted properties that I developed in other communities. I've written and spoken many times to City Council and the Planning Commission regarding comprehensive plan issues and processes and other zoning matters. It is my hope that through this process that we are about to embark on, that the public, City Council, and Planning Commission will all gain better understanding of how planning and zoning is supposed to work. We haven't done a great job with it over the past several years. This is not just my opinion, but the observation of multiple experts. Our City Council members and commissioners haven't received the training and professional guidance that they, and we as their constituents, deserve. This has led to a number of votes based on narratives and speeches rather than on the criteria laid out in our law. An attorney recently asked me what I want to see from our city. My response was that I wanted honesty, intellectual honesty, adherence to proper process, respect for the law, both the letter and the intent of the law. We have fallen short of a number of times over the past several years. We seem to prefer our narratives to established processes, to adherence to the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, and to adherence to our Unified Development Code. Perhaps this extensive revision to the comprehensive plan will better educate us on how it should be done. I'd also like to mention a good article in the most recent Observer regarding development issues and also PUDs. Later tonight, I will speak regarding an application for a PUD that contains multiple misrepresentations, that doesn't comply with multiple federal and city policies, and that clearly violates the intent of the law, and that likely violates the letter of the law. Are PUDs good or bad or just a tool? It was
30
several years
seconds.
ago, some planning commissioners and city council members and their supporters' narrative was that PUDs weren't viable. That narrative was tied to the inappropriate loss of $9 million in affordable housing funds at Morningside Lower Town development. and a similar failed attempt at upzoning while avoiding obligatory affordable housing funds down the block from their attorney. I sincerely hope that the comprehensive plan revision process is a successful, eye-opening, and clarifying experience for us all. Process matters. I look forward to this comprehensive plan revision. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mojan Savabi-Asafani.
Hello, Ann Arbor. Mayor Christopher Taylor wants us to believe that he loves Arabs. Anybody who has been watching him act knows that he has most hatred for Arabs in this community. Mayor Christopher Taylor has more hatred for Arabs in this community that can ever be described. For this city council and Mayor Christopher Taylor to pretend they like Arabs is like a gangster boss sending flowers to his victims' funerals. Mr. Mayor, do you recall a few months ago, January 2023, when Arabs of this community protested and chanted, "Not a penny, not a dime, no more money for Israel's crimes"? Do you remember those Arabs, Mr. Mayor, for whom you have declared your love? Arabs in this community have for decades come to these chambers, have chanted, "Stop Israel, boycott Israel, do something about Israel. They're murdering us, they're torturing us, they're killing us." And you, Mr. Christopher Taylor, have silenced them. With the silence that you have created, you have supported Israeli crimes against Arabs. Those are Arabs they are killing in Palestine. Those are Arabs. And Mr. Mayor, your behavior has exhibited the most outrageous hatred towards Arabs in this community. When you said that you care about community issues when you were asked about Palestinians. You said this city cares about the community, excluding Arabs from this town. Well, there are many Arabs here, Mr. Mayor, and you have silenced their voices. By the way, do you remember in 2021 when 3,000 Arabs, do you hear me? 3,000 Arabs showed up outside this building chanting the same slogan we have here, "No more military aid to Israel." They were right outside of this building, Mr. Mayor, and they were Arabs, those that you claim to love. And you have choked them. You have silenced them year after year, year after year. And Israel continues to massacre Arabs. Only in the past few weeks they have killed, they have tortured, they have sent people out of their homes. Pass a resolution that says we are against military aid to Israel. Otherwise, we all know that you hate Arabs, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Henry Herskowitz.
Good evening. Last October, I addressed Council about the Ann Arbor Schools' compliance with Public Act 170, which mandates teaching of the Holocaust. Since then, the school board was kind enough to provide me the requested information. I addressed the board last week and hoped that we were molding Ann Arbor students to become independent thinkers. I address Council tonight with the same concern. The textbook used in our schools is World History, Patterns of Interaction. In the section on the Holocaust, our student first reads, "The Nazis proclaimed that the Germanic peoples were a, quote, master race," end quote. I think we're all accustomed to that phrase. But I note that there's no attribution to that quote, no reference. Which Nazi leader said those words? There's no way for the student to know. If the student were equipped with books that challenge that claim, such as Benton Bradbury's The Myth of German Villainy, he could read that no Nazi ever said those words. And if the student were encouraged to do so, he could download a copy of Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler and could scan for master race. He won't find it, and he may be puzzled by the claim. He may even conclude that master race was merely wartime propaganda in which all sides took part. On the same page, our student reads that the beginning of the Holocaust targeted Jews due to German failures. Some Germans even blame Jews for their country's defeat in World War I, as if nothing could be further from the truth. But Alison Weir's book, Against Our Better Judgment, documents clearly that during that war, when Germany was about to defeat Britain and had actually offered a negotiated peace, Zionist Jews engaged in the process of getting the U.S. into the war on Britain's side. Prominent American Jews like Louis Brandeis and Felix Frankfurter worked behind the scenes to accomplish this task and were in fact successful at getting the Americans into the war, which ensured Germany's defeat. So what is ridiculed in the text our student reads is actually the true historic accounting of events. I encourage the board, as I do counsel tonight, to provide our student with enough information to make up his mind independently and critically about historical events, and that he be provided with an array of viewpoints, not just one. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Eric Ivanich.
Eric Ivanich on Zoom, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Eric Ivancic, and I live in the 3rd Ward. I appreciate this opportunity to speak before you tonight to talk about the center of the city. It's now approaching 5 years since Proposal A was passed, and the sad truth is that we have very little to show for it. The request for proposals is still being worked on. The space has still not been activated in any meaningful sense. City staff's analysis of what it would take to activate the space with food trucks and mobile vendors is damning. And the director of the Ann Arbor District Library has been very clear about the inherent challenges of using that space for library events. If and when the results of the RFP come in, any project approaching the drawing shared by Proposal A supporters will come at a cost of millions, or more likely tens of millions of dollars, and there's no source for that funding. The ballot proposal included no funding component. And when Proposal A was on the ballot, the key supporters and organizers of the initiative assured us that city taxpayer money would not be required and that private money would flow in. Yet it's taken us 5 years to finally put together the comparatively little funding just for the RFP. I am therefore asking City Council members to take a hard and honest look at where the project currently stands in contrast to what the public was led to believe and the opportunity costs of allowing this process to continue. The people of Ann Arbor deserve better. It's painful to think of what might have been. We could have had much needed housing. We could have had 1 or 2 floors of retail behind the plaza to create traffic flowing through it, making the space a space where people feel safe and relaxed. In other words, we could have activated that space. We could have had a public plaza that was privately maintained, and our city could have had revenue from the 100-year lease, from new property taxes, and from renting a portion of the parking structure beneath. And our city's kids might have even had a seasonal splash pad and outdoor ice skating. Please, take that hard and honest look and act boldly and realistically and find a new path beyond Proposal A to reinvent and activate this space. I believe the public would appreciate the chance to weigh in again, this time 5 years wiser. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Greg Woodring.
Thank you, Council. My name is Greg Woodring. I'm the president of Ann Arbor for Public Power, and I live at 1012 West Cross. I'm here today to ask for one small addition to the budget that was just proposed by City Administrator Mahoney. Very much appreciate your excellent presentation on that. The council may remember that back in January of 2022, the council approved a feasibility study into municipalization as well as some other energy options. That study was funded in September of 22, and it's going to be finishing here in about June of this year. We do not know the results of that study yet. However, if that study is positive, the next step would be to get a valuation of DTE's assets. Ann Arbor for Public Power is suggesting that we reserve some amount of money in the budget to pay for that study should we decide to do it. We originally proposed $500,000 for that study. However, after talking to other communities that have done this study, they believe that it'd be considerably cheaper than that. So we're amending our proposal to $250,000 reserved to get a hard valuation of the assets. What that valuation will do is it will help with the city's legal proceedings to be able to go to DTE with a good offer for the price of their assets should we decide to go through with the acquisition process. Mayor Taylor actually just gave an excellent interview where he outlined the process for moving forward with municipalization on stateside. I'd definitely recommend all of you go and listen to that. And if any of you have any further questions or would like to discuss it more with us, we're always happy to talk with you. You can reach out to us at Ann Arbor Public Power at gmail.com. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Ellen Strongman.
Sarah Ellen Strongman on Zoom, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Ellen Strongman. I moved to Ann Arbor in 2018. I've been a resident in Ward 4 since I moved here. And I'm here today to talk about the so-called center of the city. The election where Prop A appeared on the ballot was the first election in Michigan that I was eligible to participate in. My parents raised me to be an active citizen, and I registered to vote as soon as I moved here and was eligible. I read all about, the various elections happening. I read up about Prop A, and I remember thinking, well, this is silly. It's obviously not going to pass. In particular, I remember reading a story, I think in The Observer, where they interviewed proponents and opponents of Prop A, and of the proponents picked were a couple who said that any building on the lot would block the view from their $500,000 condo. And I was really surprised when it passed. However, I have sadly not been surprised by the complete lack of progress that the so-called Center of the City Commission has made. I recently saw a number of tweets about the work that wasn't being done at this commission. People smoking and drinking during public meetings. Just last week, I was walking down Division downtown to meet a friend, and the only people I saw anywhere near that lot using it were a couple of teenagers on skateboards who were actually on their way to Liberty Plaza, because that seemed like a better place to be able to try and do, kickflips or whatever. City Administrator Dahomey's recent report outlining the many ways that quote-unquote activating the center of the city as a place for food trucks was thorough, honest, and, as a previous commenter said, damning. I would like to join several other commenters, both at this meeting and I think at others in the past, to ask council to step in. I think that we would all, as Ann Arborites, love to have places to gather. City Administrator Dahomey's description of a potential splash pad and community garden at the currently named Fuller Park, I'm sure has been met with lots and lots of enthusiasm.
30 seconds.
But it's also backed up by actual planning and expertise, which the center of the city doesn't have. We need to put our money where our mouths are and use them for things that are important. And right now, this boondoggle just isn't one of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brandon Dimcheff.
Brandon Dimcheff on Zoom, go ahead.
Hi, this is Brandon Dimchoff calling in from West Larrytown in Ward 4. I am also calling in to ask Council to take action to address the lack of progress that we've seen at the Library Lane surface parking lot. In the nearly 5 years since voters narrowly passed the charter amendment to turn that parking lot into a public commons, there's been next to no progress towards that goal. The site remains a surface parking lot, the city is out tens of millions of dollars, and we're further behind in building much needed housing as a result. If Prop A hadn't passed, we surely would have had a free usable public plaza and a splash pad by now, along with $5 million more in the Affordable Housing Fund. The current state of the site, as emphasized by AC1 on tonight's agenda, suggests that significant resources would be required to transform it into a suitable space for even hosting food trucks, resources that we are understandably hesitant to allocate. The last meeting of the Council of the Commons, at that meeting, one committee member appeared to be fully baked while the committee discussed an, at best, half-baked RFP for the space. It also seems that Library Green has been sitting on funds for who knows how long that they simply chose not to spend to accelerate the RFP. If the beginning of a draft RFP and maybe food trucks is all the progress we've had in 5 years, it's time to cut our losses and move on. Whether we repeal Prop A entirely or replace it with something more flexible, I would like to see us put the issue to voters this year. The longer we wait, the worse it is for everyone involved. We must make a decision as soon as possible to be able to move forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Adam Gestevitz.
Adam Juskevich.
Hi, this is Adam Juskevich from the 4th Ward. I sent this to council as an email, but I wanted to call in and read it into the record. I read this astoundingly brutal, I might add, memo last night and was struck by 3 things. First, Proposal A was passed in 2018, and we're only now looking at options such as food trucks. We're coming up on 5 years. Everything about the center of the city and Council of the Commons, or whatever the correct style to refer to this is, has had a lack of urgency. We are coming up on the bicentennial with nothing to show for it. The Council of the Commons is still working on putting together a design RFP after nearly 5 years. I watched the most recent meeting, and it was a disaster, with one member interrupting and monopolizing much of the discussion time with a list of 18 vague amendments. Towards the end of the meeting, he appeared to, as our elders would say, toke up. Looking back on the minutes from previous meetings, it doesn't seem as if they report much back to council, and it isn't clear to me what they've been doing all this time. Second, $130,000 a year for food trucks. If we can even do food trucks with the poorly worded charter language Proposal A saddled us with, and if we can find operators willing to take us up on it. Third, and I'll just use the proposed ballot explainer text for this, quote, 4, the charter amendment does not provide a funding source for the development, maintenance, or programming of a park and commons, unquote. We don't have money to put food trucks here. Please, put an end to this charade. Don't let it drag on for another year or 5. Dissolve the Council of the Commons so they stop wasting staff time and the time of the 2 council members sitting on that body. They aren't seeming to act as an advisory body to council anyway, so I don't think we would be losing anything without their input. Pass a ballot initiative that allows voters to fix the mistake of Proposal A. Either strike the language entirely or, preferably, modify it so that the space can be developed to provide a public plaza, housing, and money for our city priorities, which could include affordable housing, climate, active transportation, unarmed response, debt service, etc. I don't want this issue to still be hanging over our heads while we are supposed to be celebrating the bicentennial. It's time to move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Eric Zecker.
Eric Zecker on Zoom. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is Eric Zecker up in Ward 2. I'd just like to add my name to the folks who've already spoken about the center of the city tonight. I really think that it's time to re-examine this and put a ballot initiative to the voters to let us decide. once and for all, after everything that we've seen over the past 4+ years, whether it's worth putting any more time, effort, and money into this broken initiative that we embarked on, ostensibly for a public plaza, but really to stop a development downtown. A lot of the supporters who remain after the development was stopped are still divided in purpose and scope. Other than a small flower bed and maybe a handful of events over the 4+ years, this parking lot is much as it was, with no real plans to change it anytime soon. I think the city administrator's memo is correct, and I think his plans for the rest of the city sound really well thought out and wonderful, and in stark contrast to what this group has come up with. It's time to cut bait. There's a dawning recognition in our city that we must adapt and change to meet the growing crises of climate housing. And if we're going to devote time and energy into something, then let it be that, not window dressing on a parking lot. The only way to change the use for this lot now is by amending the city charter and putting it to the voters. And it's within your scope as our city's elected leaders to do just that. And I urge you to do it. Do it this year. Put a ballot proposal forward and let the voters decide, either to maintain the status quo as it is now, or come up with a new progressive use of this plot that is right next to the bus depot near the library. Something better than a parking lot. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Mr. Mahoney, for your great presentation tonight. It gives me a lot of hope for our city.
Thank you. Are there communications from council?